Um, Mandates, public safety, tenant, customer needs, and positive cash flow to the port. Continue to revise and maintain fixed asset thresholds based on capital projects. And an ongoing comprehensive financing plan for prudent utilization and leverage of the port's assets and capacity, a diverse and stable stream of operating revenues generated through ongoing investment. So I do run through those quickly, but I think it's good for all of us to be on the same page as to, you know, what our strategic plan is, what our mission is as a port. And that strategic plan not only tells us what we need to do, but what we don't want to do. We don't want to go here or there if we're trying to get to where we're going long term. And as you know, projects and investments can take a long time to put together. One of the things I mentioned in earlier discussions with staff and with commissioners individually is kind of making sure we understand reserves. It can be reserves or contingency, however it's labeled, but I like to think of it as cash left over that's not budgeted for operations or capital projects in this fiscal year. So there's a remaining balance. That's what we consider reserves, and you can use part of that reserves as insurance for unforeseen, unplanned emergency type things that come up. And then there's more of a savings account, which is setting aside money for future planned expenses and investments for the port, because we don't want to run short on cash for future projects, matching funds for grants, crossover runs, you know, things like that, working capital. And so those two things put together, you know, can generate a pretty, what they say, savvy financial plan. So, and this was talked about at the Oregon Government Finance Officers Association meeting as well. It's really important for us to take into consideration. So, I forgot I had these bullet points. So, and then resources, that would be things coming into the budget, cash coming into the budget from operations or from non-operating sources. Rents and reimbursements is roughly 52%, 4.3 million change. We're looking at secured grant funding that right now 1.3 million, roughly about 16%. Terminal services, 730,000. Licenses and permits, roughly 560. We are proposing the assessing the property tax, the port tax. That would be roughly 6% of the budget. We can talk about that a little bit later. Interest earnings based on our balance in that reserve account. Right now it's currently 5.25% at the LGIP. So we've estimated that rate coming down a little bit just to be a little more conservative, but roughly $377,000 annually. Tenant capital reimbursement, that's for the O&M, I believe, with Port Westward. And Bayport, RV Park, there's all these different sources, launch fees, marina fees. We're not planning on any loan resources coming in. So that total is 8.3 million generated. And then our beginning balance, which we're estimating kind of the ending balance of FY24, roughly 9.7, 9.8 million. And so the total budget are those two numbers combined, the total subtotal plus the beginning balance, roughly $18 million total. And then on our proposed resources there shows the beginning balance roughly at 54%. And then it shows those other things I brought up in the pie graph here. Just for a visual representation, rents and reimbursements being the highest other than the beginning balance. And then this is, next slide is a pie graph again of the revenue by site, what we're estimating for different sites here at the port. Again, these are all in the detail and part of the budget that we prepared, but good to have a visual representation there. And then these are what we consider requirements. So you have the resources on the one side, the positive revenue coming into the port. The requirements are expenditures we have category, and so breaks it down here into personnel, services, materials, and services. Capital outlay. No, they don't have any transfers, and then payments for debt service. That's where it breaks down into the contingency there, 6.9 million roughly is what we're estimating. And the total would be that $18 million budget. And here's how that's broken down on a graph. So you can see contingency on here is roughly 40% of that amount, which is both the reserves for the unforeseen things plus the setting aside funds for future projects. So a little bit of detail on the personnel services. We're we're not proposing to add any staff. We remain at 19 FTEs. We're providing for a cost of living adjustment of 3.5%. That's in line with the December 31st CPI numbers, and pretty standard for most government agencies. So PERS will stay at 13.5%, no change there. And our health insurance premiums actually have gone down based on how we've restructured some of our health insurance with a health reimbursement arrangement and a higher deductible policy. But the port will be taking on some of that risk and self-insuring the difference in deductible. So there won't be any cash out of pocket change for staff on the deductible. So hopefully we're mitigating some risk and taking on some risk. So health insurance continues to be a expensive benefit for us, but definitely important for our staff. So the materials and services are broken down by program and budget. If you want to refer to those details, I don't have them listed on their presentation here. The total is roughly 3.6, 3.7 million, again, all estimates. And here's how the expenditures are broken down. On the pie graph, roughly 47% go to facilities and property management. The terminal services, executive, business development, finance administrators, and then the non-departmental. I believe that's our loans are all in there. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Because I had a question on that. I wanted to double check, make sure we put that up. Then capital expenditures. So just a little, I'm sure all of you know what capital expenditures are, but just to clarify, it's when we buy or fix asset upgrade an asset or restore the property or adapt to a new or different use. So capital projects we're proposing FY25 total about $4.15 million. We've secured grant funding and have estimated the cost for these projects for be more or less. I hedge on the side of them being more, but these are some of the grants that we've received for the projects we're proposing. The Oregon State Marine Board for the Scappoose Bay Marina Upland Improvement Project. It's a $400,000 grant, estimated total cost of $800,000. So that'd be roughly $400,000 of port cash. FAA, the Scappoose Airport West Side Pavement Project, total cost $400,000 to $385,000 grant. Another FAA for the runway rehabilitation project, and that's the same $400,000 estimated cost, 385 grant. And then the Oregon Department of Aviation, $135,000 grant, estimated total cost of $324,000 for emergency generator. And now we'll go through and propose by the site. We'll detail these out. The Scappoose Air Park, roughly 1.1 million total. That includes port cash plus the grant funding.
There we go. It needs grease.
I'm going too fast, so our producer back here, Mr. Salisbury. No, Bob's great. I've learned a lot on all the points from Bob. So the Scappoose Air Park 1.1 west side pavement maintenance, the runway rehabilitation, and the emergency generator. And move on to the Scappoose Bay Marina, looking at a total of we're estimating $928,000. And that's for the upland improvements which Miriam discussed in the last commission meeting here. That project is on towards the tail end of development, getting ready for construction. 800,000 estimate, 400,000 grant from Oregon State Marine Board. And then we're looking at a service boat to service the docks and any kind of in-water infrastructure we have. I know there's been some questions on exactly what the scope, what type of boat we need, what type of work we're doing, but I mean, that would be the kind of the maximum budgeted amount, 128,000. If we can come in less than that, I think, we would try to do that, but that's kind of a placeholder there. And then for Multnomah Industrial Park, 150,000. And on the bottom right there, that's the Winter Circle building. And that's where we're proposing to make maintenance shop alternative there in a short term. Ideally that we move them into a better facility longer term, but estimating it costs 150,000 there. And that has to be done because ORPET at Multnomah, where the current maintenance shop is, has to be moved because they're going to be adding on to their facility. And so this is kind of a required project that we need to do, and alternative that we think will be reasonable for the budget. And this is Columbia City Industrial Park. We don't have any proposed capital projects for Columbia City in FY25. And then this looks like a familiar place. Administration, we don't have any capital projects proposed for FY25. This McNulty Industrial Park, Milton Creek, Railroad Avenue. We don't have any proposed capital projects in FY25. Now we get to this place probably looks familiar too, Fort Westward, dock improvements related to the seismic work that's going to be, or that is required by the state of Oregon. This would be some preliminary work done, soft cost, permitting, engineering, things like that. 1.95 million would be towards this project in our FY25 budget. And our Clatskanie Business Center, a couple million, doesn't know. Nope, no proposed capital projects in FY25. No, that's a larger discussion as well going forward. A little bit on debt service. We include the principal and interest on 6 existing loans. There's no outstanding bonds. There's a breakdown, and this is also in the budget, but our largest loan is for the new hangar building at the airport, roughly 2.5 million dollars outstanding, about $171,000 in payments a year, plus insurance, plus utilities. So, I mean, that's not included in the debt service, but it is our largest debt balance there and payment for the year. So, in the beginning balance, it's inclusive of funding for operations and reserves. As I mentioned, we're proposing that at 9.77 million, and that basically we're estimating what it's going to be on June 30th of this fiscal year, and that would be our beginning balance for the next fiscal year. Again, estimating where we're going to end up on June 30th. This graph here shows the beginning balance history, and so you can see it's definitely gone up over the years. And since 2020, it's had a pretty steady incline. And since I'm fairly new to the board, I don't know all the history on our projects and so forth, but I know this past year or two, we haven't actually completed a lot of projects, so we haven't expended as much money as was originally budgeted. So that's part of the reason why that amount has increased. And we can talk about it a little more maybe if you have some questions, but several projects this year have been reallocated towards future different projects. And so that's part of the reason why there's more funding in the beginning balance, and that will likely be coming down as we do more projects. Financial reserves, again, we can always reallocate and reappropriate money by supplemental budget if there's something that comes up mid-year to use some of those reserves. The budget includes $3 million for the emergency part of the reserves, and there's $425,000 that's in that number that represents tenant deposits for leases. And then that leaves a remaining amount in there, but roughly $3.6 million reserved for future capital projects. And we are proposing the tax levy tax for this budget. So if we were not to impose the tax, also come down by, excuse me, not the beginning balance, but the balance at the end of the year, that FY25 would be that much less, roughly 472,500 at the tax rate of 0.0886. So I know there can be some more discussion on this. Won't go into it further right now. And so this wrapping up the committee questions, public comment, vote, and adjourn. Not that you didn't know that already, but it's in my presentation. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Guy. Appreciate it. Now I guess we'll have discussions, questions from both the budget committee as well as the public. If there are any questions, or wants to start off with questions, discussions.
We're going to have a couple. All right, a couple of points.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Discussion, since the budget, the tentative budget was discussed by the commission last month. I've had talks with staff and a couple of things I'd like to just bring to the attention of the committee. One was a recommendation that in light of, we're going to have a very serious discussion about marina funding and the grant opportunities and dredging and access to marina. Given that we haven't received any kind of specs or worksheet or understanding what the boat will do for the marina, talk with staff about reducing that amount by $50,000 and moving that to the airport for a total of $100,000 at the airport to allow us to demolish those hangars and potentially even get started with some engineering on something better and revenue generating to go there. So I would put that out for discussion.
Port boat's been we've discussed it a little bit. In passing with Paul, and we've brought it up multiple times, but I'd like some type of overview of what this port boat's going to be used for. That's going to dictate the cost of the boat, because right now we have no direction. That just we want $128,000 boat. We need to know exactly what the boat is going to be used for, where it's going to be used, you know, the nature of that type of thing. And then I think that would give us a lot better direction, because it could be warranted that they need a boat of that magnitude or of that cost, I should say. But until we know, it's just a hard decision for me to make. So
I would agree with those comments and say it's a non-revenue generating expense as well. We have quite a few of those in the budget. That one does seem maybe a little questionable at this juncture.
Just early, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, we may end up doing that, but
Yeah, especially to be used at a facility that has a very uncertain future, in my opinion, just without really understanding dredging costs going forward completely and how often that has to be done. It's already operating in the red. So those are some of my concerns around the boat and the marina in general.
the idea for the airport is unrelated, but that's something that the 20+ years I've been on the commission has been said we were going to get to. And I think the commissioners have seen it lately. It's going to fall down on its own. My vision would be that we could do something that would maybe put a tie down slab or something now that could be converted to a building when there was need. We have an empty building out there now.
Certainly not opposed to moving funding for the airport. It has the potential for revenue generation.
And we still left a pretty good chunk there to allow for this. Yeah.
Well, Sean and I had an interesting conversation with Mr. Langner at the City County dinner in Caledonia. And I would just, whether or not what decision we make, I thought your input on the type of boat that we needed was very valuable. And if just take a few minutes to reiterate that.
Commissioner Shorter basically has the same analysis I have. I think the amount of money you have budgeted probably is insignificant, is insufficient. If you have a boat that's going to be pushing and tugging, but what are you going to do with the boat? And that you need to know that first. Because there's a lot of things, a lot of boats that will look nice, but you can use them once and have a hole in the next day and go backwards. So do you really know what you want to do with the boat? And once you know that, then I think it's time to go forward.
But as I recall, the amount of money being budgeted for the type of boat that you would perceive that we needed.
The type of budget would be at a minimum about 128,000, because the work boats that I had purchased when I was in the Coast Guard 25 years ago were at $100,000 then.
So yeah, we need to find our use and figure out what we actually need, because there's probably things that we shouldn't do, right? We shouldn't try to move a boat. I wouldn't think makes sense. You know, things that we can farm out, hire out.
and not to go on and on about the port boat too, but Port owns a floating home down there. So the boat, we don't want to forget that the boat we buy has to fit in there properly. So I'm not saying that we couldn't park it elsewhere, but so until, you know, we get that figured out, who knows, so.
Right. If I can just throw in a comment on the boat, when you get quotes, like if you could get quotes for ongoing maintenance and storage and upkeep of it, because that'll be an expense going forward for a long time, hopefully.
Yeah, there's an old adage that boat stands for bust out another 1,000.
Yes. That was an old saying. Yes.
Hole in the water.
Yeah, that purchase would have an impact into the future.
I do think if we leave the 78,000, should we need more, it could be a multi-year. We could combine it with next year's budget or something. have options.
Yeah, we set aside some money and decide.
Yeah, as soon as we get direction from Port Sean and Port staff to know exactly what we're doing there, I mean, yeah, but I think that's a personal opinion.
I don't know if we want to make a decision on that before I have a couple more items to bring up.
Can I say one thing on that? And I forgot to mention this in the presentation, but for the first time, we're planning to put together a reserve fund for maintenance. It'll be an internal GL account. We plan to fund that in this budget with $600,000 the end of this year. That would roll over into FY25, and then we're going to be putting $50,000 in that account every month, and then we'll be able to draw that account down for maintenance related expenses. And so one of the things that you mentioned with the airport hangars, that could potentially come out of that maintenance fund and not have to impact a line item somewhere else. So
yeah, my main concern about the hangar is like it's not if it's going to collapse. You're getting close, and it's a big ugly eyesore out at the airport. So that's just.
And I don't really care where it comes out of, but every year for more than 20 years, I've heard where it's going to come out of, and they're still standing. So I don't care which line item we can get from, but if it's not in there, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that maintenance fund. Not because I don't think it's a good idea, but with just an arbitrary number and monthly funding on it can give a real false sense of security on that. I mean, it would seem to me it would be better to spend the money on a study and see what the actual reserve should be on it to replace roofs and those kind of things on a timely basis on it, rather than, we're putting 600,000 into a fund and we need to have 27 million on it. Like I say, it gives a false sense of security.
I think it's a good starting point. We can assess that going forward and make adjustments as needed. I completely understand your point.
Because it would really depend on what would be part of that maintenance.
Right.
Redoing airport runways is expensive. So yeah. Well, that's I point well.
This is not the capital, right? That's a
right
differentiation there.
Right.
And then things come up like this last year, we did repairs on D-Dock. The guys and gals are down there replacing beams, so across, and that was money that we hadn't budgeted for, but so with this will help with a lot of that stuff that just comes up. We have all our infrastructure does is age. It's just getting older, so we're just chasing stuff.
And I think it's been kind of past practice that things get pushed down the road because it's the easiest way to do it in an organization is you forget about deferred maintenance costs, and it comes to bite you sooner or later. And I think that the point that Guy was trying to bring is that there needs to be a set point, and you need to start building from that. I think it's been mentioned that they wanted to do that several years, and it's not been an exercise that's been done. But we can see that our structures are aging, our equipment is aging, so there's always a need to have planning for those replacements.
It's kind of a balance when we look at immediate maintenance needs, and then we look at the long-term capital needs of the port and trying to balance out what we can spend on maintenance and then what we need to set aside for future projects. The last sheet of the budget has just a projection over the next 4 or 5 years as to what staff has put together on capital projects, and I'll have right things like that, but it's significant. And so having $3 to $4 million of, in our bank to use for future projects is just a, you know, small amount of the money we need. So, you know, we have to balance that out between maintenance and capital investments. And preferably those capital investments should either sustain current positive revenue generating investments or add to new positive revenue generating assets, not necessarily putting it in assets that don't generate positive revenue. So anyway, sorry to go into a little more detail there, but that's.
My biggest priority was to find 50,000 more for the airport. Where it comes from was, I always like to propose.
We'll find 50,000.
I'll hold you to it. Another 50, right? So you got 50, you have 50 in there
Now
now?
you're asking for 100.
I am. I am.
That's
50 plus 50, great.
That's can I math?
That's
All right, Robert.
I forgot to be nice to you, but I might take it back. So I'd like to, when we get to the line over the airport, I'd like to see $100,000. Not to exceed, we don't have to spend it, but we need to get those things demoed, cleaned up, looking nice. July 2nd would work for me, but see how it goes. So I don't know if that's something we can do, budget meetings to vote on, or
We could change that for the final budget, right, Bob?
For the final budget, usually after this discussion, if there's any type of changes, there'd be a motion and an approval of the net effect of these changes on the budget, unless it would warrant another meeting. Recall last year, we made the adjustment for the tax assessment, and it was just made in the motion at the budget committee level.
I've already given my 100,000 for the airport. My second item you might like better, but well, let me do this one first. I think Elliot can help, but just informational, but I believe we have the opportunity potentially to purchase assets at Port Westward as a part of the insurance settlement. I'll say this carefully. That were built, I mean, after the dock crash, Global Properties stepped in and built the infrastructure they needed to continue. And they were in a big time crunch and needed to get it done. It's done. Now the question is who should own it and how the insurance reimbursement works. And there is the potential in it, and I think it's a very complicated decision. It'll take a lot of presentations of the commission and all, but there's the potential for the port to buy those assets with insurance proceeds and then be the owner, and they would generate revenue. So that would mean the budget committee coming back. So that
I have to do a supplemental.
You have to do a supplemental budget.
yeah, it'll be big numbers, and I don't think we could even guess now. So it can't.
We haven't budgeted for any of the insurance transactions for Port Westward.
So, Ellie, did I assess that fairly?
I think so. There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. But we wouldn't want to lose an opportunity. We'd have to just bring the budget committee back. Second item, and I'll be done for a while, is I haven't had a chance to socialize this with the commission, but there's a potential we could receive an unsolicited offer for the Clasconet Business Center. The offer would be probably $1, but we could relieve ourselves of that liability here in the next.
Yeah, that's.
Considering we were looking at tearing it down and that cost us a couple $100,000, I think I found somebody who would use it and allow the port to continue to use it and do some maintenance. But I'll know more tonight. Be aware of that. I think that might make Kelly happy. Right now we have some pretty good unfunded liability there with paint and
Asbestos.
yeah. So
we paid nothing for that building, is that correct? Right.
So we make $1.
Yeah.
No, it's it's on our books for $4,350. That was a closing cost that we had.
Okay, yeah, paperwork cost, so, yeah.
That's good to know. I can tell them what the closing cost would be.
And we did pay for some environmental assessment.
Yes.
As well.
Yes, that's true.
We wouldn't propose doing that again because you just did it.
Yeah, just turn it over to the respective fire.
I'll get back to the commission with that, but that would take one liability off of. That's all I have, thank you.
Any other questions or?
Well, I think probably one big elephant in the room in regards to the tax. And I'll give my input on that. I'm really interested to hear from others. Originally, I had, if we were gonna levy the tax, I wanted to do something that would be really beneficial to the public. And some of the work we're doing out at Scappoose Bay seemed like a pretty good candidate for that sort of thing. I've talked to several commissioners about this. I'm really struggling with that because we have somewhat of an uncertain future facility. And after talking to Commissioner Ward, we talked about maybe asking the public a little bit about what they would like to see, not only at that facility, but in regards to the tax and getting a little more input on that. It's a pretty big decision to make. I think it not only affects our constituents, but it affects other taxing districts, my understanding, due to compression. And I'm just not sure we have enough information, for me anyways, to really start levying that tax this year. It's a pretty big deal to bring that back. So curious about others' thoughts on that. I know it would obviously impact our budget, but just interested to hear what others have to say about that, committee members and staff.
I'll make it brief because I already made my comments, but I was one of the original proposers, I think, of the idea of limiting. The idea was to see what we're doing well with revenue from Fort Westward, from the training activity. I want to see the community benefit from that, and I still feel that way. I would support using the levy authority when it will do something great that we might miss an opportunity for. And what I saw the levy going for this year was the matching money for the upland work at the marina. I have the same concerns you guys do about the future of the marina, given our concerns about dredging in it, and pretty soon we may not be able to get very many boats in and out of there. So I don't want to be the one who spent levied the port tax, got a big grant, spent a whole bunch of money on something that we can't use. So
to add to that, I'm not concerned about the Scappoose Bay going away. I think that's always going to be a thing, maybe at some capacity, obviously, but implementing the port tax, I think, is if that's a direction we should definitely get a lot of public input on. We've already made some major changes here that were obviously needed, but I think that would be a lot to throw in the mix as well. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but I think there definitely should we should proceed carefully with that.
I'd very much like to hear from our committee. I think this is a good test of how people view it from the outside. I mean, we're very insular here. It'd be nice to have your opinion.
Well, the amount of the tax as it affects me personally is small amount. How that will be used in the port's operation, that is a concern because we want to make sure that as a taxpayer, I'm getting full value for taxes that I do pay, or at least assume that I'm getting value for that tax.
Been levied most of the years until recently. Yeah, I mean.
This would be the
3 years.
fourth year, I believe, it's not been levied.
And, I wasn't really sure the rationale then, except that we were getting potentially quite a bit of lease money from Next. And in the beginning, and then with which has dissolved largely. And so whether we need that for part of our budget management towards the future, I would say if Next goes away, we definitely would need it, unless we end up finding another client that would be even producing half of what Next was producing. So it sounds, it's not very much in our total. I mean, we're looking at, what is it?
470.
Yeah, it's 0.5%, right?
I think it was
Or 5%,
5%.
5%. Yeah, so it's really not very much money. It is though, you know, it's gonna be there. It's something that we can count on. And if we were doing, I suppose we could put it into the reserve fund or something like that, you know. I mean, in our thinking, I mean, it all just comes in here and goes to how we isolate it, but within the budget. But anyway, I'm not opposed to having the tax because we had it for a long time. I don't remember anybody ever was concerned about it. And it is really a low tax given the money that we both get from our tenants and the risk we have on some of the things we do. We do have risks that are out there still. So I'm not opposed to it, actually.
Chip, can I just add that the tax was eliminated before there was an Next Energy. This Next Energy had nothing to do with it. It was the revenue we were receiving for the global exchange, transload. Sorry, I was trying to say. I'm sorry.
And that will stay.
Yeah, that was the revenue.
That's been a positive thing.
It took a little hit this year, but.
Right.
Yeah. And the second thing is what's going to be really confusing to the taxpayer here is they're going to, thank goodness, when I work with the county and their landers help, they're going to see the economic development for what was that thing called? Enterprise zone. Yeah, it had a different name on the tax thing, but it's top of it all. CCDA won't go away. That has been cleared up and between Commissioner Garrett and Delaner and the Port Commission stuff. Yeah. That one's gone, and that's not even the port tax we're talking about.
Can I just add that? I don't want to interrupt a committee member. We have 2,400 acres, which is a lot. There's a lot of infrastructure there that we get a lot of surprises. Water leaks, different things that are our responsibility are not our responsibility. There's just a lot to keep up on. And I feel like when I started here almost 10 years ago, I'd heard about the incident at Multnomah and the collapse, and we got that insurance proceeds, and we were getting stuff done. I think a lot of people saw that. We rebuilt Multnomah, put new buildings up, and rebuilt the marina. And I think that seeing a lot of capital activity like that was I mean, I want to join that board. I want to get on that commission. They're doing stuff. And to think that, wow, they're doing well enough that we can actually do away with this tax, be self-sufficient, it's a great place to be. But I'll tell you, it's a very, very small percentage of ports in Oregon and Washington that do not levy a tax. Can't use Klamath, they have 2 grain terminals. That's the outlier. But in Washington, Guy, correct me if I'm wrong, there's maybe 1 or 2 others that do not levy. Out of 77, we have 23 ports in Oregon. And as far as I know, we may be only 1 of 2 of the 2 that do not levy the tax. But all to say is the infrastructure that we have to maintain is a constant. So
I think you're 100% correct on that. It's just, but now that it's been removed and it's been gone, 4 years removed, correct?
Yes.
People are going to want to know why it's going back in, I guess. I think you're right.
we should ask when we get away with it.
Yeah, I wasn't here, but I mean, so that's just kind of the thing. If we re-implement it and warrant it, people are going to want to know why. And we're going to have an answer for that.
And there's going to be a lot of perceptions out there, right?
Yeah.
Next went away. You're going to assume that it's being put in place to make up for that. It's also whether it affects people largely or not. It's a tough economy right now. Inflation is high. Costs are high for people. If they think they're getting taxed more, they're going to be pretty upset about it. And those are all perceptions, most likely. The actual impact is pretty small, but it's, I mean, that we still need to do our due diligence in making sure that we educate folks and ask them how they feel about it.
Yes.
So, in my way of thinking, somebody asked me, what do you do with that money? Well, it all goes in the budget, so you can pick anything.
Yeah.
I picked in my mind the marina upgrades because that's a non-revenue producing asset to the community that the community, South Columbia County absolutely loves. I mean, it's one of the kayaking thing is taken off, which is wonderful and all. So in my mind, that's where the money would go. But the easiest answer is if we drop the levy, what are we going to cut? If the budget's full. Whatever we were going to cut, then that's what that money went for.
I'd still like to come back to the group. I'd love to have.
I think one of the issues you're having with not taxing is the public perception, as you gentlemen have mentioned. There is going to be levies coming down the pipe from other entities in the county. There's not enough money coming in. If you take it to zero and it stays at zero, people are going to perceive it never needs to be done. Maybe you under levy. You can under levy, you pick the number, you can plug it back in. I think as long as there's something on a tax statement, it's a little easier for people to kind of understand it's out there, it's doing something, it's working. Because when it went to zero, people assumed it was all done. And it managing a perception because I'm pretty certain there's going to be 2 or 3 more different levies coming down from entities here, whether it's the fire department, whether it's 911 updates there. There's road departments looking at some other stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's coming for levies. I think it's probably time to step back in line and say we're still taking some money, even if you under levy, but just keep something in front of the people. My 2 cents.
I'm inclined to agree. As a resident, I'm happy to pay it. It's hard to fund stuff, right? That inflation's affecting all of us. I also, and I apologize, I did not read the strategic business plan this morning. But I do see in here, right, even in the financial area, the strategy 1.6, right, providing diverse and stable stream of revenues through investment, but a levy would also really help you diversify the funding streams, and you need that. Every bit helps. Also in the business plan, I believe there were 7 projects that were identified as high priority, and 4 of them are appearing here. That's a really compelling story, right? You've identified priorities and you're not able to get there. I think the public understands that and understands the value of the port. It's my 2 cents.
Well, there's a gentleman in the back row that I know has a very different opinion. And I would love to hear from John Q. Public.
He's sitting back here fuming. You like me to speak?
Yes.
Yes, of course.
If I were an 80-year-old company and I was expecting grants and tax dollars extracted from the public to keep me floating, I'd be very unhappy. And I'd be thinking about my own business plan of what I'm doing, what I've done for 80 years, and why I'm not profitable enough to not need those dollars to operate. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Well said. Thank you.
You know, it was interesting because I talked to somebody who I know well. He's lived here for quite a while. He's involved in timber and stuff like that. And we were talking about Scappers Bay Marina. And I said, you know, we've got troubles there because it doesn't make any. He said, shut it down. Shut it down. Don't want to see it. If it can't make money, don't do it. Are we ready?
I personally was ready to shut it down.
I mean, that was his reaction. If you're getting into something and you're not making any money, shut it down. And so
I think there are a lot of other options, you know. We've raised rates recently.
Sure.
It could be profitable potentially if you made it $20 to park there. Might piss a lot of people off.
Starting to people mad.
You know, There's probably a breaking point. Two people know one for coming.
Right.
Point being, that, and it's a huge asset in the county. It's probably our number one tourism asset, right? And
Yes.
I think that's really, really important to maintain even at a loss.
I don't
even knowing it's
disagree, but
subsidized.
I don't disagree. I think we do need to maintain it, but we need to be rational about. But it is a high cost item.
Yeah, and that's where I come back to, what does the public think? Take
Does the public
$472,000 of your money, in my mind, to subsidize this facility and upgrade it. Are you okay with that? Do you like that? Do you not like it? I'm inclined to believe that people would like it, but I just don't know. Everybody I talk to, fishes, that wakeboards, that kayaks, they love it. But there's a large part of the population here that doesn't use those things.
In answer to my point was, you're wanting more information, I agree with you, but I think to ask the public, would you like to be taxed this or not, is a pretty easy answer, I know.
Oh, sure, of course.
But what does that mean?
What are you willing to give up? Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, or what do we propose here? I mean.
Well, and it's more the idea that we're in this together. Let's make a joint decision. It's your money, it's our money. I mean, Ralph has a point of view that is adhered to by others. He is not by himself in that opinion.
What do you got to say?
That's what I would like to hear. I would like to hear a community discussion that brings all of this to the fore. So everybody gets their chance to voice their opinion, but also they get a chance to actually see what we're talking about. You know,
Learn a little bit about it.
I don't think most people have any idea how much money the port itself subsidizes the marina or the airport. These are community assets, and it's because we're a public agency that we're able to do that. And don't we all like having these things? But I don't think most people are aware that these are not money-making operations. And until they are, they need to be subsidized either by us and taking it out of our budget or by the public participating.
We have to make the levy decision by the end of next month. I mean, that's not one we can budget for, but not draw on.
Right.
Right. It needs to be notified.
Yeah.
What's the drop dead date?
Well, we have to supply the county our intent to levy the tax with our adopted budget. That's how they start their process from the tax.
What's the date you say, well?
June 30th.
Would it be a possibility to this proposed levy, it's actually for a certain project? It's like a targeted project. The biggest problem, again, I think we're going to have, and again, everybody had great input and very warranted. It just, we're just putting the general public doesn't get to see what that money goes to. Of course, they could call and you could say, hey, it's part of this and it's maintenance here. I don't even have a specific project in mind. I mean, obviously, Scappoose Bay is one of them. But as Chip stated, there's a lot of people that think like your friend does. If it's a loser, why are we doing it? But it is. It's a great asset to the community. So I think we're going to be on. I don't think we're going to have time to do an appropriate survey in 3 weeks or whatever it is, or a month or whatever. But
not that this is any consolation. But in Washington State, where I was before in the port industry, in Washington, you can go up to 45 cents a thousand versus 8 cents a thousand here. Most of the public marinas in Washington aren't generating a positive revenue, especially when you take capital replacement into effect in the budget. And then there's parks, trails, other types of recreational facilities that don't generate revenue, but have a direct public benefit. And so a lot of the taxing money that the Washington ports bring in helps those public assets that are available to everyone. It's not a study on a dock or environmental permitting or something. This is actual physical infrastructure that the public can enjoy on an ongoing basis. So, I mean, there is a strong argument for the tax. And a port isn't like a regular business. I mean, I understand, why we wouldn't want to use public money to support a business. This isn't a business. This is a public benefit organization, and not all of our activities are going to generate positive revenue. So if we don't have any tax revenue coming in, that revenue to support other non-income producing projects, parks, marina, airport, then that has to come out of other operating revenue. That means that we can't use that other operating revenue to reinvest in other projects. So I completely understand everyone's viewpoint, but I'm just trying to add my perspective on that. And I think, and Mr. Langner brought up a very good point, if not, maybe not having the entire tax, but at least getting it on the books so that it's there for future need, either increase or decrease, but to have it on the books, I think that's pretty wise recommendation. So.
And if I can comment, I agree. And I think the port being recognized as a recreational landowner and as a provider of recreational amenities is really important. This isn't just industrial land. These are public amenities. And they always suck revenue. Like it's important to find a way to get additional public buy-in. And also to really publicize the use of your recreational amenities. I'm thinking about Trestle Beach as well as Scappoose Bay as a non-motorized user. Like I'm going in until we're full down there, But no, these are really amazingly valuable assets. And being along the river, you also have these ecosystem functions and the preservation that happens on all of your properties. I think there's a lot of public benefit that can't be made up in rents.
Go ahead.
Okay, I think there are a couple of things from the public perspective that, we should be mindful of. And one is that there's nothing that gets people more upset at a public entity than like deferred maintenance, like the potholes, the things that are falling apart. Like that's the quickest way for people to notice you and not in a good way. So if we're losing efficacy because we're not, maybe keeping up on those things at as fast of a clip, that's definitely something to consider. The other thing is that I think would probably make people upset is paying for, I think more than taxes is paying those things through fees and like one-time use, that $20, like so if we're picking between the two, I think I would be more inclined to go with the levy. I do think the story is important. I think that's really important. So.
Yes. To be clear, I was not suggesting that.
But if that's what we had to do to make it like profitable, is like put a gumball machine there and be like, I don't know, I think people would get really upset with that.
Time to levy to the recreational opportunity does make some sense in my head, but I will say that I'm gonna ask for a small percentage of that to be used in the North County as well. Bring your flats drive, river access.
Well, I think it would just be smart I don't think you need to go into great detail, but I mean, just state what it's for. I mean, because I think personal opinions, when people just see a new tax line item, they're not going to follow up. They're just going to be pissed that they've seen a new tax line item. And we all know it's warranted. I don't disagree with what you said. I think you're 100% correct. Well over 2,000, acres of property to be maintained, and yeah, I get it. I think that's my opinion on it. To have, something to that nature where people can see, hey, it's for recreation. Hey, that's more opportunities for me. So
you could even say, Everybody wants to say that.
It's not a dishonest argument in my mind, because if I had to cut something, and I'm not big on the marina, I love that marina, but if I had to cut something, that would be what I would cut. So that means that levy to me is what that's funding. To me, in my head.
But that's the whole thing,
Right.
is we have spent hours agonizing over how this should happen or if it should happen. And we have not communicated this to the public. And without a good channel of communication that's going both ways, we are just simply going to look like the bad guys. Why would we want to do that? If we wait a year, if we spend some time and effort educating the public, not just at the marina, but also at the airport and our business in general, it just seems to me that we go a long way toward engendering support rather than the opposite.
I'm very inclined to agree with that. If we're gonna do it, I prefer to delay and do it with a lot of public input. I'd feel a heck of a lot better about that.
Yes.
That is, I mean, like you said, I've been thinking about this last few days, and before that, it's just been going back and forth, because I do see a huge benefit, and yeah.
Yes.
We can't charge people that much to use it. It's always gonna lose money likely with the costs associated with running the facility. But I think people need to know that.
Well, and frankly, when I voted to have it removed, it was in my head like it's never coming back, ever. Because you can give people all kinds of goodies, but you take any of them away and you're gonna pay hell. So in my mind, it was just like, well, that's never gonna be on. That's never gonna be a part of our budget again. And obviously, none of us thought that we would be in the position that we're in right now, where we actually do need that money in order to maintain public assets. So we're in a different position now, but we have to be able to communicate our story if we want buy-in from the public. If we don't care about the public, that's a different thing, but I just can't imagine that we don't. I think we all care about the public. I mean, we're sitting here because the public voted for us. So I think, in my opinion, we owe it to the public to get out there and tell our story.
Not levy the tax requires another decision. We offset it with.
One question I had asked, and I don't think we have the answer, but maybe it's an answer we can get. Is there a way to push out the deadline on the grant funding for the upland part of the Scamper's Bay upgrades?
And I'd have to defer to Miriam on that. That would be a question in my mind. Whether we can do that.
Very unlikely.
Yeah. It's not only unlikely, it's not, future benefit.
Right.
You're talking about the OSMB.
So you're, just so I'm clear, we would look to reapply for that grant, the chance of getting that same funding is slim, just because of the.
It wouldn't look good.
Right.
They should look at our history and.
Understood.
So I would rather cobble together $400,000 by deferring both. And I don't
say there's
know.
128,000.
That's a big chunk of it. That's a third, I believe. And I don't know what else we can do off the top of my head, but that's, I think the vote's a lower priority than the upland.
Maintenance section, the proposed 600,000 beginning balance there, 50,000 a month into that fund offsets.
That sounds ideal. I come back to what Garrison said, Dan Garrison said around the having an idea of what those means. I know there's going to be some that come up. We just have no idea what they're going to be, right? But we probably have an idea on what some of them are and how much wiggle room we have in that account. See if it's possible to did another, what, $270,000-ish?
If the committee decides not to levy the tax, I would commit to working hard to roll up our sleeves and find the force, because the matching money is a fantastic opportunity. We're gonna need to explain that marina really well anyway, because the things that most need done, we're not able to do, and it's gonna look like, why are we doing these silly things when not silly, but less, I mean,
Less
less than
urgent.
dredging. Yeah. And it's because the opportunity's there and
I guess I've said it twice already, and Nancy and Brian both. I don't think anybody's against the levy. It's just, we need to, the public, we have to give this time. Because if we just throw this right out there and say, this is what we're doing, we're gonna have a real problem, I think. That just
another bit of context for you folks, of the taxing districts in the county. Our taxation represents less than 1% levied to taxpayers. So you guys are, I'm sorry, finish. I was gonna say, as you guys know, you guys are elected to represent the folks that you're representing. So we didn't ask them to take it away. They loved it. The article was great. I think we got some traction on it. I remember thinking the same thing Nancy did at the time. I was kind of rolling my eyes thinking, this is great. We're never gonna get it back now. And I knew then that we're not going, you know, we're not, like I said, 2 grain terminals and a steel berth. So my concern then was, great, this is gonna be fun. We're trying to get back because of public perception, regardless of the amount.
always be my goal to see this port not have to levy, but we will be there this year now.
again, once you let something like that go and you try to put that back in, there's gonna be, and we all know it's warranted. It's just, there's gonna be a lot of questions surrounding that, why you want it back. Yeah.
Think we can cut another 350 out of that budget?
Why wouldn't you just consider under levying? I mean, it gets it back on the books. I know there's one that's stuck there. Right now, the tax rate is 0.0886 by law. If you cut it to 0.05, you generate a small fee, $266,000. It's not a lot of money, but you get it back on the books and people start looking at it again and start becoming aware of it. I'm afraid, and I say this based on budget committees I'm serving on presently, there's going to be levies coming down right behind it real soon. And if it was 0 now, people are going to really be upset if it comes back. And that's when 2 years from now, all of a sudden somebody's going to come back and say, well, gee, they want a levy for 911. We want new communications over here. And the sheriff's jail levy is coming up from, is it 0.57 cents? Now it's going to come up to 0.87 cents in this coming election. Everything's coming along. I think I can't see a public body that I'm not affiliated with that isn't looking at levies and increasing the taxes because they just can't get it done. And I would just, my feeling is if your people get used to paying it, they're used to paying it, and they'll do something. And I would not want the port to have to come back and sit there and then try to an uphill battle starting from 0 again. You know, God bless you that you were able to go to 0. And I made campaign comments on, yes, I would try to keep it at 0, but I'm looking at the situation we're finding ourselves in, and I think it would be prudent to have something on the books. And I agree with Rachel. I think if you said waterfront access and you're going to dedicate it to waterfront access across the entire port district, wow, that's something I think just about everybody can get behind.
About 270,000 at 5 cents. So you got
$266,365.
I defer.
So my only concern with under levying, I like the idea. I don't think it solves the perception issues, whether it's 5 cents or 9 cents, or maybe if it's 1 cent, I don't know. And we're still not gathering public input before doing it. I guess I would be interested potentially in doing it at a very, very low level the first year. And that's very defensible, you know, so a small number, and then potentially gathering more input to say, you know, if we take this out to the full 8.8 cents, is that something that you would see value in, basically, to the public?
It's still less than $10. It's the full thing for most people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the other one is you look at your rate studies, and I'm gonna go way off the course here. I get frustrated at senior discounts, and albeit I am one of those senior discounts. But I watched the boat launch ramp. There's a man with a $70,000 pickup truck launching an $80,000 boat with $400 fishing rods and $200 reels, and he's in here begging for the senior discount. If I was going to give a discount to anybody, I would give it to that young family with a mom and dad, 2 kids, and a car topper boat with a little 2-horsepower engine. They need the discount. It's not some rich fart like me, or even moderately rich fart that sits here and has all the toys.
Yeah.
You're correct. But to go off course, I was at a Boosters Club auction here recently. You will not believe how many people came up to me that well off that were upset about the $10 launch fee. I mean,
We've had
just flipped out.
We've had
I mean,
so
I'm
many
like,
complaints about the launch.
same thing, $200,000 boat, $100,000 truck. I'm like, you're mad about a $10 launch fee. So it's
And if you launch 9 times a year, just go buy the.
yeah, it's just wild though. I mean,
And it is, that kind of goes to the mentality of keep something tax in front of, if you can.
What that speaks to me, is a lack of education.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what I would like to get done.
Yeah, because the majority of people believe that we are really fat, that we have all kinds of money, and that we are not good managers of that money. And that's why we're going to talk about bringing tax back. Ralph?
None of you had mentioned anything about raising the gross. If you raise the gross, you wouldn't have all these problems. And something is up here that we're not getting. We used to have 48 businesses. Now we have 42. I hear there's another one that may be on the way out. And that seems to be a public perception problem. And even if it's a nickel, it's money you're taking out of the people's pocket for something that should be here, the only government agency that can make a profit. Name another one that can make a profit. There's not one. And that's what you're supposed to do here, not take our money to finance. I shouldn't say lifestyle.
That's what he's saying.
Pretty good, let's just put it that, and benefits.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point. And I do think that our philosophy, coming from private industry my whole life, yes, I think our philosophy of being really generous applies not just to the airport and the marina, it applies to all of our tenants. And I have personally been disappointed that our revenues as far as tenant leases has not, in my opinion, kept up with the cost of inflation. Hence, we couldn't even add on to our own building because we didn't have enough money to cover the increase in building costs. So yes, of course, there are different ways we can do this. You know, you're absolutely right. But it's like, how industrialized, how corporatized do we want this agency to be?
But isn't that your whole job?
Ralph, I get it. I get what you're saying. I totally do, but it's not that easy because we are not a private industry. We are not beholden to stockholders the same way a private industry would be, or even a sole owned proprietorship. We have a much broader mandate, and that does lead to not being able to keep up with, or not desiring to keep up with making the very most profit possible. That really is not the philosophy here at the port, as far as I can see.
Well, it's not only a matter of the philosophy on that, the designed function is to create infrastructure for business to flourish.
Right.
Jobs.
Yes.
That's the ultimate purpose of this being here on it. It's not meant to be a profit center on it. If it was meant to be a profit center on there, it would be subsidized through SBA loans to grow up and be its own daddy. on that. That's never been the intent on that. It's recognized. That's why there's grants and stuff are available and why it was created on it was to create things that private can't create.
But unfortunately, we're just not even keeping up with costs because costs have gone up so exponentially.
Yeah, no, I agree with that aspect of, but I just think it's an unfair comparison on that to try and compare us on that to Premier Real Estate or something on that. This is intended to be a for-profit business on that. They can raise their rents on that once a year on that by Oregon law on that and boot out anybody that doesn't. And that just doesn't work for what the port's intended to do.
You're right, but we're taking Ralph's comments as, sorry, Ralph, I don't mean to use your name in vain, but using your comments, this is his perception. He's a person in the public who perceives us as not being good managers. And that's a problem.
Not a good manager, but growth. And profit may be a bad word to use there, but something has to keep going on with all this land that's owned by the port. It's out of private hands that maybe could make a profit. And you want to, all this grant money and the tax money you want to extract out of us. And if it's a penny, it's still extracting from us. And we know now that all these other people are coming for taxes. And here's another one, if you look at it as the bus system here, CC Rider, and what it's been over the years. They voted on it 4 or 5 years ago and it went down big time. People have these problems with government agencies. I won't give up on this. I want to see some business.
Do we know how much staff FTE it would take to do a public information campaign? Because that's not free either. That's a whole cost. Like that's somebody's time.
Right there.
Yeah. But that would be like me saying, surprise, you have a whole new project for the next fiscal year. It's a major.
Op-eds and stuff in the paper and educate people that way. It's, I mean, just with our strategic business plan, that's an outreach that I struggle with on that. I help with where like a handful of people, I push them out so much to everyone they can. Survey, I mean, it's just people, it's hard to get people interested. It just, I struggle with it. I tried really hard. But I think, I mean, we could definitely, I think maybe putting some stuff in the papers, maybe a commissioner letter or something like.
Well, and we could do things like go to the Rotary meeting, go to the other meetings that take place instead of asking people to come to us.
We do have staff that go to those things, maybe having commissioners, the commissioners would attend with us, and that would be very helpful. Also.
Absolutely.
And you know, we do a lot of community events and outreach in the summer here. It'd be nice, you know, commissioners joined us in the booth. Great too.
Yes, and if we had a sheet, you know, a handout sheet that we could give people with numbers on it, explaining these kind of things. So it isn't, to me, our problem is that we're always expecting people to come to us. And I think we just have to change that philosophy, and we need to make a concerted plan to start going out to other avenues of communicating.
Can I offer two thoughts? I think there would probably be a little more interest in the marina than there is in the strategic business plan. No offense to the strategic business.
Exactly.
People care about it. People actually, a lot of people I talk to, oh, the port, the Scappoose Bay. You guys do anything else?
Right.
No, we're just Scappoose Bay. So I do think there's likely to be some more interest. But I agree, it's tough to get people to meetings, and finding ways to do that is really difficult.
just to reach out and contact people is almost impossible. And this county is horrible. And I mean, something like 4% read the newspapers, less than 1% listen to the radio station. You know, you talk about doing a campaign on it. How are you going to disseminate that information?
Facebook.
I think that the marina is probably a ripe opportunity to say like, hey, do you care about this? You use this marina? Come talk to us. Here's what we have going on.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be slightly one-sided information, but at least we get buy-in from the users.
No, I mean, realistically, you know, that would be the thing that would have to go if we got into a crunch.
But I think everybody, as you stated, everybody really underestimates how, you know, borrowed out everybody's on time. A lot of families are leaving at 6 a.m. They don't get home till 7 at night. So if you're expecting, you know, on top of if you have kids in sports and because they have to drive out of the community to work. So, I mean, not everyone, but a lot of people. So it's really hard. I mean, so to expect, I don't care if it's a strategic business. I do think Scotty's Bay will draw more people, but it's next to impossible. I mean, to do that. I do think the public is owed, you know, obviously an opinion on the matter, but if you're thinking you're going to get 30 people a meeting, I have news for you. So, I mean,
it's not representative of the community, to be honest. The 30 people that show up are not representative of the whole.
Yeah.
It's the same 30 people. Yeah.
I would say, so our analytics on our website, our marina pages are what everybody goes to, the cameras. That is like,
we're right in front of the camera.
Yeah, just hang it in front of it. I don't even want to know. Yeah,
that's what everybody goes to look at. If I do a post on social media about the marina, that's what gets the most attention. That's what people in Trestle Beach. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
that was
you're
like
right.
one of my most popular posts last year, like 2,000 likes. It was huge for us. So tying it to the recreation stuff does get people's attention.
Yeah.
So the second thing I was going to say is just to plug my own idea. One of our evening meetings could be dedicated to this. And hopefully we can drum up enough support by putting it out on Facebook, by putting it on our website, by posting about it out at the marina.
By having handouts at the marina.
Yeah.
I say the most limited people is other than that, you're not going to pay that much attention.
Well, we're technically thinking about taking their tax dollars away.
Yeah, we're taking their tax.
That would be the invitation to the meeting.
Yeah.
Or the marina improvements.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, there were, in the one meeting I attended here, about 50 to 60% of the people were only interested in the marina.
Yes.
In that strategic planning.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, it's sort of.
And the airport, yeah.
It's like, use that email to get people to come.
And it worked.
Talking about the marina and the airport and how many people came and that's all they wanted to talk about.
Those are the two things that we lose money on.
So,
Yeah.
so I'm wondering from the comments from the budget committee and the public, we should maybe move the tax off of this year's proposed budget and do, you know, for the future next year, come up with a plan educating the public on what levying the tax will do for the port as well as the public.
I also wonder if there's some sort of compromise, because I do find leaving grant money on the table a little troubling. And I just am wondering if we can, you know, maybe levy a little bit and do an information campaign and consider levying more, you know, I mean, is there like a minimum amount that we could,
There is no minimum.
in order to maintain the grant?
Yeah.
How many significant digits do we have? 5 zeros and a 1?
Is there some sort of middle ground where we can accomplish both? Because
I think we could levy that, I mean, not levy it this year, and still fund that marina upgrade. But yeah, that's tight numbers, and I know guy is very conservative and I appreciate that, but I think we could shave a little bit there and
So
come up with that.
and not lose that grant funding.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe we could, I mean, democracy could do it. I think the commission could get.
Yeah, I'm just sort of, we've got the budget committee here from the public. And it looks like at least 3 or 4 have said that they're okay with assessing part of the tax. So you've got community input right here. And why not take a middle road and assess some of it now? And then be working on this campaign over the next year to see if additional, or more or less, assessment would be taken. I'm just staff. I know I'm trying to point out, you know, just that there is support for a middle road here instead of just black and white, no tax, full tax. I would just ask you to consider taking a middle road on this.
You guys, actually, this body makes the recommendation
To the commission.
So even though this decision could be, it doesn't necessarily mean that's what they use.
Would be appropriate for you guys to, we have, it sounds like we have 3, is that, so we're clear there? 3 people are in favor on from the public here that are in favor of implementing the tax, is that correct? Is that?
One, I'll go on record saying I would like to implement, and if it was under levy, I have it broken down if you want to do 1 cent, 2 cent, 3 cent, 4 cent, or 5 cent. If you want to just do 1 cent, you'd raise $53,000. If you want to do 4 cents, which is half, you do $213,000. But I on record would say that I would recommend levying it, bring it back on.
Thank you.
Can I ask just one question of how this works? For a recommendation coming from the budget committee, is it a vote of the 5 on the budget committee, or is it a vote of the full?
The full.
Yeah, I thought so. I just.
We don't even get for, so.
I'm comfortable with levying a portion of it, knowing that, you know, the due diligence is upon the port to explain to the public going forward that this is the reason that we're doing this, and going further on, there could be possible, we could levy the full amount, but this is why we're going to be levying the full.
I would like to see it levied, and I would like to see it dedicated to recreational opportunities.
Yep, I'm fine to be on the record. I'm in support of levying it. I think for those recreational and the public user benefits, I think you've got a clear story to tell now with the grant match, and then into the future, you're going to get a lot more engagement. And if they are public benefit improvements you'd like to make, you'll have a forum and an audience for that.
And I am in favor because I think more of that support in the budget supports the maintenance goals and moving us toward the independence that Ralph is talking about.
Well, I think we have a first opportunity right now to get that word out, that we have advice from our budget committee, and we need to get that out on our Facebook page, that our budget committee are unanimous in that decision. At least this will get the ball rolling. It'll get people thinking about this. Whatever we decide aside, these are 5 people from the public who support reinstating some portion of the tax.
Yeah. Please mention.
It's a trail balloon.
Okay. Please mention that by name.
Contact info.
Well, it's not ringing it up. Well, you got to put a new line again.
Wait, so, I mean, you're all on the budget committee, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Can we keep going?
Yeah.
Just for curiosity's sake? I know what you just said, but.
First answer.
No, I'm not in favor of it because we haven't done our homework. We haven't even broached this with the public. We've only got 1 person from the community who's not sitting up here. That's who I want to reach. Yes, Ralph.
Anybody online?
No.
7 participants.
Oh, there are? Oh, it's all from the port. Yeah,
We did put this meeting on Facebook.
of course.
Couple of. Did you manage to work back for the marina?
Yes, I do too.
Tim?
I'm in favor of starting to levy it at one rate or another, but yeah, I'm in favor of starting to levy. I think it's too important to our long-term flexibility.
Can I still last? I'm really torn on it. Something very small I would consider. I 1 cent is like $4 for somebody with a $400,000 home. And I think that's a story we could tell, but it's still gonna, I'm still concerned about telling that story without having asked the public about it, but I would maybe do something like that.
You can be, you have a conversation.
I'm just saying, I don't see how we can ask very well because with 50,000 population and as it was mentioned earlier, nobody reads, nobody looks at anything. I mean, if you stuck it on their tags when they came into the marina saying, you know, if we don't put the tax, you won't be getting this tag because there'll be nothing here. So, yeah.
They made me go first, but go ahead.
I'm not in favor of it until, I'm not opposed to doing it. I want more time for this to be rolled out.
Yes, we should have started this in January.
I always took pride that I was the idea to get rid of the tax as a dividend. Once it changed definitely economically, but I would like to see if there's a way at least this year to do the marina project and not levy the tax. I would vote to support it here because it's going to go to the commission for discussion
on that.
But I'm not sure how I'll vote there.
Yep.
I also have one more question. So I know, was that a unanimous decision? And we're obviously not going to ink your name on this, but for a partial levy, to me, if you're going to levy, just do it. I mean, I think you're numbers wise, you're 100% right. I mean, to do it that way, but the public's going to look at it as you levied a tax. And the difference between $4 and $8, they're probably not going to care. They're just going to be pissed that they levied a tax, right? So, I mean, even though it's $8 and we know that they probably spent that on coffee that day, you know, I get it. But is that so was the decision the partial levy or the full 8 cents? I know you had it broke out and you said that, but I just wanted to know from you guys what you thought on that.
I was looking at a partial levy. SCCDA or basically they under levied for about 7 years out there. In Port Westward is a good measure, good measure to good faith opportunity. So that, hey, we're working towards this. I think that if you're not leveling the whole thing, you can still say in good faith, this is why we did a little bit. And I would go back. I've got a great tax waterfront access. That's what it's going to be for. It's a simple message. It's to make sure that the people can get back to the river. They want to see that. And I would leave it and keep it that simple. And I think that would sell today, my opinion.
Amy mentioned a good point here, which, you know, we all pay taxes, I think, if we live here. But, you know, we didn't really get quite the traction, I think, that we could have because we still showed up. We were still listed there. It just showed 0. We were still on it with CCDA and stuff. So if you're like me, I go to the bottom right of all the tax districts, that number.
Yep.
You know, sometimes, oh yeah, okay, these cemetery district, all that stuff, or I 0, nice. But I'm curious, and she brought up a good point, is how many people actually notice that we haven't been levying for, you know, what did you say, a $400,000 house was about $40 or?
We used to jokingly say it was the cost of a pizza. That's like the common stack. It's like about $25.
I think everything you've stated is correct. It's just the people that are gonna notice it. You know, like,
A lot less people notice that than notice the top where CCDA had the number. And it was good as economic development and it's always assigned to us, which is true, but.
at this point, this is gonna be moved to a commission decision, is that correct?
Yeah, we'll vote on a recommendation here and then we'll come back.
Okay, so with that, is there a recommendation then to approve the proposed budget? 24-25 less the 470,000 for tax? What would that new amount be?
That would be for no levy.
No levy.
Or if that's, this is a structural thing here. If you guys are making a recommendation out of the committee, knowing that the Port Commission, you know, this is what the recommendation is, the Port Commission make the final decision. I think that's what either you're talking about now is making a recommendation to under levy or, you know, and move that recommendation forward is what I'm under. I think that's what the process is. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think actually what it is we just set a dollar amount in the receipts under.
Yes, right.
Yeah, actually, the motion, I think, has to have a rate.
Yes.
Rate and dollar amount.
Ultimately, it does, yeah.
Yeah, it's set at a rate.
Once, yeah.
I believe there is also an adjustment to the vote. We probably want to include in that motion, right?
Adjustment.
To the vote amount.
I thought you said vote.
Okay, now vote.
Yeah, but where are we gonna take that from?
I think that was specifically in the budget is 128,000.
So you're just gonna reduce your capital budget by,
I think you wanted to move.
when it moves 50 over to
the airport.
the airport, right?
Yeah.
But that's just an,
You have to approve the budget and the property tax rate.
Right.
right,
Separate.
as presented.
Now?
Proposed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Or have another meeting.
Yeah, you could have another meeting.
Everybody looks super excited.
Well, like, okay. Trying to make a motion here.
Waiting for you, Rachel.
I don't know, like. So I would propose to. Okay, the motion would be to accept the proposed budget with the changes to the boat purchase as well as the addition of $50,000 at the Scappoose Airport for, do I need to be specific, for hangar demolition?
Yes.
Okay.
Reducing the boat purchase by 50 and putting 50 in.
Yes.
How am I tracking everybody? So reducing the fund for the boat purchase by $50,000, moving that 50,000 to the Scappoose Airport demolition fund project. And considering the tax levy approval in a separate motion.
Don't we need a dollar amount that you're approving the budget for?
And if we pass yours, then we just have to.
I don't think we're changing the budget amount. We're just reallocating.
Yeah, there's the fund shift and then if, well,
yeah, the Port 7.
levy.
The property tax
Property tax.
resource needs to be reduced to some number that matches up with the rate.
that's right, yes.
You're getting.
But we don't have to cite that number today.
Right.
Our motion can just be on there with the adjustment
Adjustment.
as adjusted to.
Okay. Yep, okay.
You're thinking when you come to us, Bob.
Yeah. Okay.
I would second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to accept the proposed 24-25 budget, making movement in the marina boat and putting it to the airport hangar, as well as see, that's it. Right. And we'll make another motion, the tax levy.
Does that work back there, legal?
Yes.
Okay.
So now you have to make a separate motion for the
Next week.
next.
Well, yes, you have,
No, you'd vote on this. That's what.
would have to change the amount of money unless we do the whole tax thing suggested.
But that's, the motion is actually as adjusted for that.
Okay.
As adjusted for revised tax levy on that, then we'll approve the tax levy as a separate element.
Right.
And then it's a clerical fix.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yes. At the next meeting, I'm just speaking about when we have to, is our deadline for approval. Would you have Paul or whoever has those, could you send those numbers to us that are broken down, clearly delineated at the per household number if the levy was implemented, if that's possible, or whoever?
You can do the household number without, you just basically just take your assessed rates, right? Assessed rates, but we can give you just a breakdown of what, I can do that real quick.
I mean, awesome, I appreciate that.
So do I hear an approval on the motion?
I second it.
Call for the question.
Second, we gotta vote.
Motion was to
Reclassify the 50,000 from on the marina to the airport and to adjust the property tax levy, reduce the property tax levy.
To consider that as a different item.
4 cents for the age.
That's a separate motion.
That's a separate motion. Yep, yep.
So you got to vote.
Yep, call for vote.
Yeah.
And I'm
Also, it's all there.
We can say all in favor?
I
Aye. Opposed? Unanimously carried. Okay, now the next question is
want to approve
the
tax levy, or approve property tax levy for a rate of what was, I don't know, what's the $250,000 figure I thought was.
So if the whole assessed levy goes out at 8, the per remember for the county proposed. The total the court can assess is 0.08 or 8.86 cents. That's your maximum assessment. If you assessed just a nickel, it raises $266,365. If you assess it 4 cents, it raises $213,092. If you assess it 3 cents, it's $159,000. If you assess it 2 cents, it's $106,546. And if you assess it just 1 penny, it's $53,273.
Make a motion at the 4 cent level.
in the motion. Is there a second to set the tax levy rate at 4 cents?
I would second.
The motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Was a yes, sorry, I was bleeding my phone.
Okay.
What was that vote?
Yeah, what was the?
What's the vote? 2. I think it was 8-2.
Am I the only one
Yeah.
voting against?
I think it was in favor.
I voted for to push it to the commission.
Yeah.
Or we'll make our own.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, that works.
So you,
So we're not voting?
We're voting.
I'm getting
recommendation.
confused here.
You're voting to push this
To the commission.
to the commission.
Okay, well, yeah, then, yeah.
Commission and the commission.
We are the commission, so it's like, I'm confused. Am I gonna vote yes here and no there? Oh, okay, gotcha. Gotcha.
We expel you.
Yes.
There you go. I get
Okay, is there,
Is this like unanimous and everybody wants to vote for a yes?
Yes,
Yes.
we're voting yes to put it to the commission.
yes,
That sort of is a confusing message though.
It's a very
I think you guys
confusing
are all
message.
supportive of this tax.
Yeah.
You all vote for it. So
The budget committee.
I think it's supporting.
unanimous.
Yes.
Yes.
More information to be.
Okay.
Gina, in 2 weeks, there'll be a full discussion amongst the
Right.
commission about.
But just not now, it looks like everybody's in favor.
I think you just need to.
But it's just a recommendation.
Yeah,
The recommendation from the citizen advisory committee is
No, it's
100%.
the budget committee,
budget committee, 'cause it includes.
there's a difference.
And it's unelected.
Well, I understand that, but how do we separate the two of us?
You don't,
Oh, you can't, huh?
With the budget committee.
So we're gonna do.
because the budget committee is comprised of
Then why am I?
commission and
Yes.
five.
Yes.
We're gonna list the whole total. Let's make sure we have everybody's.
We need to vote the same way we'll be voting when it comes to us. Is that right?
No, not necessarily, because in the interim, we could have more information that could, you'd be like, oh man, we want the full rate, or you know what I mean? There could be a difference between now and then, because the commission could take different action than the budget committee's recommendation.
Okay,
Absolutely.
well then I think I need to change my vote in order to be clear.
Should we do a revote?
Okay, so we're gonna do a revote.
Show of hands.
The motion is to set the tax levy rate at 4%. For the proposed 24-25 budget.
Right.
4 cents per thousand.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Bob, did you say 4%?
4 cents.
4 cents.
Cents per thousand. 4 cents per thousand.
Okay, with that, is there any other items that need to be discussed for the budget committee? If not, is there adjournment?
With a huge thank you, Bill.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dug right in.